I mentioned this the very first day we started to go over the Bodhisattvacharyāvatāra, and I forgot this weekend. But, you know, when we receive teachings, of course, the motivation is that we need to become enlightened for the benefit of all sentient beings. Therefore, therefore I need to train in all the practices that lead to enlightenment. Therefore, I need to learn about them, to put them into practice, so forth and so on, right? But it's also very important, I forget, I think maybe Lama Zopa Rinpoche said, when we receive teachings, we also should have a little bit kind of bonus motivation, thinking that, you know, I'm receiving this teaching, here in this case on Bodhisattvacharyāvatāra, and later in the future, you know, may I be able to also give this teaching, right? So that these teachings spread in the minds of all sentient beings, and by so doing, right, may then the people I teach therefore get the realizations, you know, instantly, just by merely receiving the teachings from me, you know, and therefore may these, Mahayana teachings spread and be sustained in the world for a very long time. What do you think? Right? So, you can't leave that to someone else, right? I said this the other year, probably, or the other time, where you know, it's His Holiness the Dalai Lama's great aspiration, maybe wish, right? He keeps talking like this, that, you know, the Tibetans received the precious Buddha Dharma through the kindness of our Indian gurus, right? So he says, you know, that India is the guru, and, you know, Tibet is like the chela, right? But he says in reference to himself, you know, pretty good chela. Okay? Qualified chela. Yeah? Now he's saying in his, like, the kind of, one of the main purposes in his life, he now wants to bring back the precious teachings back to the land of their origin. Okay? You understand? So now, in general, you know, when we think about the goals of our life, then I think it's very effective. Forget about Bodhicitta and all this stuff. I mean, don't forget about it. I'm not saying like that. Just put that on the back burner for a second. But just to aspire that, you know, may I be able to fulfill, you know, the goals and aspirations of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Wow. Amazing. You see, because like the Dalai Lama, you see, whether we accept him as a Buddha, some people say, oh, he's a great Bodhisattva, it's clear that, you know, his actions, his aspirations are for the benefit of all sentient beings in the world, right? So, inasmuch as we can work to help further those aspirations and bring them to reality, it's like we're accomplishing the activities of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas themselves, even if we're not. Understand? Yeah. So now, I've said this last year, I was urging you, right? You, meaning the people here, that if we are to reestablish the Buddha Dharma within the land of, India, who's going to do that? Yeah. That's good. That's good, Anita. Because unfortunately it's like this, I've tried, it's still on my to-do list to, learn Hindi, learn Kannada, right? I might be able to, order at a restaurant and buy my bus ticket, right? But unfortunately, I'm a little bit skeptical that I'll be able to teach the Dharma in Hindi, in Kannada, in Tamil, right? So now, unfortunately, well, it depends how you look at it. See, in this land of over 1 billion some people, right? I can only teach to people who speak English, right? And the vast majority of people here, they would not be able to understand the Dharma teaching in English. Am I right? Okay. So now, Nishita, what languages could you teach in? Okay. Well, 2 is better than 1, right? So all of you, you'll have your own kind of sphere of people you can benefit, right? And I like, Nishita could have answered when I asked, what language could you teach in? She could have said, oh, I'm not qualified to teach in any language, right? No, but that's good, we need that confidence. So actually first, you do need to further your studies so you can get to a part, right, where you can do, right? But after that time, we need our own homegrown, right, the next generation of you to then teach to people in their own language. What do you think? Anita? Yeah. Okay?
You said the teachers don't teach unless they are asked to teach.
Yes. Thank you for listening. No, the point is, Bashni, we, don't then go back to Kerala and start knocking on people's doors and say, let me tell you about Shantideva. No. we develop the qualities, the abilities in ourselves that then in the future, if we are asked, we're in a position that we are qualified to do so. Right? But there will be opportunities that will come about, right? Okay. 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 So, anyway, we reflected on all beings as been our mother, we reflected on their kindness, then we reflected on the wish to repay their kindness. So let me just end with this, right? So then the question comes up, how then can we repay our mother's kindness? Then the answer, you see, no matter how much wealth and happiness your mothers obtain in cyclic existence, it all deceives them. Right? Therefore, you must repay their help thinking, formerly my mothers were seriously wounded because of the madness of the afflictions that possessed them. Then, I produced a variety of further sufferings for these beings who were already suffering, as if I had applied sea salt to their deep wounds. Now I will establish these beings who lovingly helped me in the happiness of liberation, nirvana. Right? Okay, so what does that mean? Tsongkhapa is now kind of paraphrasing what Bhagavad says in the heart of the middle way. Furthermore, like applying salt to the wounds of those who have been possessed by the madness of afflictions, I created suffering for those sick with suffering. Now, what else is there other than nirvana to help repay the help of those who in other lives helped me with love and service? So what does that mean? Remember we were saying, when we were reflecting on the kindness of our mothers, that, they would commit negative actions for us, right? They would, lie, steal, when they're hungry, they would steal to feed us. They would lie to protect our reputations, Most of the livelihoods around actually involve some level of negativity, right? So to provide, food and sustenance for us, they engage in negative actions, right? So now, the only way to repay them is to lead them to liberation and enlightenment. Because everything else, right, is just kind of samsaric happiness, which again is ultimately unsatisfying and somehow contaminated. Okay? Okay, so it is about time. I wanted to get through the 7-point cause and effect instructions, but we still have tomorrow. Okay? So tomorrow I wanted to finish the 7-point cause and effect instructions, also go over the other type of way of cultivating bodhicitta, and then at the end I wanted to actually, go through the sort of ritual for taking the Bodhisattva vows. If you haven't done that before, you don't have to do it for real tomorrow. Some of you have done that before, and we can kind of retake it together. Okay? How does that sound?
Right.
So now, I will entertain a question or two if you have them. Please.
So, I've been thinking about about this, the seven points, there's a point that says about remembering their kindness. But there are many people in our lives whom we believe are not treating us with kindness.
Yes.
So how do we go about, cultivating bodhicitta towards them? I mean, even in the case of the Shariputra story that you shared, he cut off his hand and then he gave it. So he acted out of, he did what he had to. But from the other person's point of view, maybe he wasn't acting with absolute bodhicitta when he asked him for his hand.
Right.
So is it always in best interest for the other person and us to act with bodhicitta?
Absolutely. Okay, so here's the thing, right? There's many ways to do this. Okay, so I'll just give you a few, and then we can talk about it more later, right? So the first thing is, just to mention what His Holiness the Dalai Lama often says, right? If you want others to be happy, practice compassion. If you want to be happy, practice compassion. Okay? So, if we see that the development of bodhicitta is the sole gateway to the entrance of the Mahayana, right? Bodhicitta comes from great compassion that extends to all sentient beings. So, if we have this kind of, incomplete compassion that says, right, like we normally do, I have compassion and love and concern for the people that are nice to me, right? For those people who get on my nerves, if we exclude them from our compassion, there's no bodhicitta. No bodhicitta means no enlightenment. No enlightenment means we're not fulfilling our own purpose, right? That's one thing. Okay? But two, you see, these unruly beings, why are they like that? Right? Why are they like that? Because they're under the power of their afflictive emotions. Right? If they didn't have afflictive emotions in their mental continuum, they wouldn't be causing that much trouble. Right? So in that sense, we should, in a small sense, self-interested way, wish that they're free of their afflictions. Right? Being free of afflictions means being free of suffering, being free of, samsara. Right? It's a difficult point when we start to, many years ago, I taught a Intro to Buddhism course in Dharamsala, and there was someone in the course who got into a bar fight. Someone smashed a glass mug on their head. They were in a coma. They were in the hospital for like 9 months. Had much trouble after that, even till today. There's long-term consequences. When I then started talking about extending compassion and love to all sentient beings, it was very difficult for that person. But it kind of occurred to me, just this, that person that has harmed us, right? We get this sense of anger, right? And, well, for some of us, it is that we think if we harm them back, they'll somehow learn a lesson, and then they won't engage, or they'll think twice before ... right? But the point is, the only solution is for them to be free of afflictions, right? So I asked this person, and maybe you can all consider this in relation to our own enemies, right? You want that person never to harm you or anyone else again, right? Right? You want all of their actions to be only, the most beneficial for others, never harming and only benefiting others, right? So, what you actually want for them is for them to be enlightened. Because the only beings who never harm and only do what's most beneficial are the Buddhas. Right?
Can I ask a question?
Yes, you can.
Page 7 of first chapter, stanza 35. When bodhisattvas greatly suffer, they generate no negativity. The question that comes to my mind is, you have said the bodhisattva is somebody who is on the path to bodhicitta. Or
Okay, you finish your question. Yeah,
And if so, 2 points. One is, when they suffer, greatly suffer, they generate no negativity. So, what does that mean in the sense, when they greatly suffer physically or mentally, and what is this negativity that is not generated? Or is it that ordinary human beings who suffer create negativity? That's one thing. The second thing is, at what stage of the bodhisattva path does this become relevant? Because the first point is linked to the second.
So, the honest answer is I would need to consult the authentic commentaries on this to answer your question very precisely. But in a general way, right, okay, so first of all, it was imprecise what you said. Bodhisattvas do have bodhicitta. It's not that they're on the path to attaining bodhicitta. Bodhisattvas necessarily have the uncontrived mind of bodhicitta. Okay? So, now,
So those who take the vows are the aspirants for that?
you can have people who take the vows who are fully fledged bodhisattvas. You can have people who are not bodhisattvas who can also take the vows. So, let's just say someone who is fairly advanced on the path already is a bodhisattva. Let's forget the people on the small path of accumulation. Okay? Now, when they greatly suffer, they generate no negativity. Okay? So you can imagine this for an ordinary being, right? If we are, harmed, we want to harm back, right? An ordinary people in the world. When we are criticized, we'll criticize back, right? Right? So now, a bodhisattva with a certain level of training, right? Although they suffer from being criticized, they don't then, in turn, criticize back, right? And by doing that, instead of criticizing back and practicing patience, then instead, their virtues from practicing patience, then their virtues naturally increase. I would say that this sentiment is a general statement. There are bodhisattvas who do still generate anger, right? Bodhisattvas on the kind of lower paths. So it's not that if someone is a bodhisattva, it necessarily is the case when they suffer they generate no negativity. But in general, right, compared to complete, like, untrained people who haven't entered the path, well, they have subdued their mind. That, to a large extent, even though they experience various kinds of suffering, they would not generate negative mindsets to them. Instead, they would practice. They would use it to further their own practice, and their virtues would naturally increase. Same thing. Same thing. Like, again, this is in general, right? So there's the story of the Buddha in his past life, when the person started cutting off his body parts, and he just practiced patience, right? This is talked about in the Vajrayana Sutra, right? When the king of Kalinga cut my limbs, at that time, at that moment, there arose no recognition of a person, a living being, a sentient being. So, yes. So in that sense, that bodhisattva used that situation to practice patience as well as, he was meditating on emptiness. He could not find a intrinsically, inherently existent person that was the experiencer of that suffering, and so he used it to increase his virtue.
What your Bodhisattva, Chitta to the Bodhisattvas are initial ones.
I'm sorry?
You said that the Bodhisattvas
Yeah.
do have some amount of Bodhicitta.
Necessarily, yes. That's what makes someone a bodhisattva. So, what is a bodhisattva but someone who is not yet a fully enlightened Buddha who has uncontrived bodhicitta? That's what we were saying. Bodhicitta is the sole gateway to the Mahayana. The presence of bodhicitta determines whether someone is on the bodhisattva path or not.
If that is the path, so they are at the beginning of the path, the Bodhisattvas.
There's 5 paths, right? Path of accumulation, preparation, seeing, meditation, no more learning. The path of no more learning is synonymous with the Buddha. So there are bodhisattvas on the first 4 paths. The second one attains uncontrived bodhicitta is simultaneous with the entrance of the path of accumulation. So you could say that they're beginners. But there's also bodhisattvas on the 10th ground. They're about to, sit down under the Bodhi tree and attain enlightenment tonight. They're also bodhisattvas. They have bodhicitta. Are they beginners? Well, no, they're quite advanced bodhisattvas. They're going to attain enlightenment tonight. Yes? Okay.
So it's a long and arduous path.
Oh, come on, yeah. Enough.
It depends. Yes, sir. Yeah. Yeah.
Personally, the best thing I find about Buddhist teachings is I can relate to it, and it is subject to experimentation in my current life.
Nice.
The part where I start to, not relate to is the future, the past lives and the samsara, because I am not able to, either see it or relate to it. Is it possible for a lay Buddhist to at least get a glimpse of, this entire endless, life cycle of birth and death in a way that you can relate to it and see for ourselves that, for example, I was this in my past lives, and, that kind of brings a realization that, that makes a lot of sense.
So the answer is yes. Okay. How? Well, okay. When you're talking about then getting the realization, right? That would probably require you. Okay, one way of doing it, right? You go on retreat for maybe a long time. You get a perfectly concentrated mind with no discursive thoughts, right? At that time, certain experiences that maybe one could characterize as like clairvoyant glimpses could arise, right? In that sense, you would then realize, okay? Otherwise, yowzers. The eye appeared. When you're talking about realization, you probably need to, realizing your own, past and future lives, you need clairvoyance to realize. Okay. Now, I don't want to get too mystical here, but there are also other people you can meet with clairvoyance. Now, they could tell you something about your past life, but you might not have any particular reason to believe them. So it's actually very hard for that to garner a realization in your mental continuum. Now, the more general thing about realizing the existence of past and future lives, in general, not necessarily yours, is by using the reasoning that Dharmakirti expounded, and continuing to meditate. You could get an inferential kind of cognition or realization that a moment of mind necessarily has to have a previous moment of mind, right? Then, through some inference and some digging, you can realize that in general, like I said, right, the first moment of mind, of me in my mother's womb, necessarily was preceded by a previous moment of consciousness, because it was a consciousness. You get that realization, right? But that's not then like, oh, in my past life I was a farmer in Gujarat, and those kinds of things that you see on the Psychic Friends Network or something, right? That can only come with clairvoyance, but that is in general attainable. But first you need to get the shamatha, which is a very it's attainable, but you would need dedicated retreat whereby you attain this, what it's like called the calm abiding mind. No distraction. Perfectly focused. But, yeah, okay. I'll answer your question. I'll just leave it at that.
I have one thing to say. It's not really a question, but it's just an observation I made. Is
Okay.
that I had two dogs who I believe were my mothers in some life. Because last time when I was, some years ago, when I was sick in a particular part of my body, that dog had the same disease and that same area of the body, and she died. And my spiritual mentor that time told me that your pets can take on your illnesses, you know.
Can take on your what?
Illness upon
Oh,
themselves.
illness.
And now then again the other dog now, who's sick. So I tend to have sort of anemia, and this dog is severely anemic. And this is the same time. I can just see that. She must have been my mother in some time, some life. And now I'm looking after her because I owe her a debt of kindness, you know. I really feel that. And the Buddha said, right, that your pets are your relatives from other lives. True?
Yeah, everyone is. You know, even your pets that haven't taken on your illness have been your mother.
Yeah, I mean, even
Right?
they.
Even your neighbor's pets.
Yeah.
Right? That's the thing. Like, you know, beginningless time. You know, it's not just one time, but all sentient beings have been our mother many times. That dog of yours has been your mother when you were reborn as a dog, when you were reborn as a human, when you were reborn as a Hawaiian monk seal, right?
Yeah, or a
When you
cockroach. Whatever.
everything under the sun, many times. So you know, but of course, the upshot of all this is good that you are taking care of these other sentient beings with compassion, right? So you know, even all of this talk of sentient beings have been our mother or not, this is again just a means to an end, right? The end is to then treat beings with compassion and love, right? So if you somehow, maybe not here in India, but sometimes when I teach people from a Western background who's like, no way, past and future lives, right? Then you don't have to meditate like this, right? Anyway, I'm digressing. Okay, any other questions? Archana?
Venerable, how do we deal with this conventional expectations of our family and friends vis-a-vis having equanimity? Because I think when you have equanimity, basically your circle is expanding rapidly, right? And as you develop equanimity, and then it will be difficult to meet the expectations of conventional roles that you are in.
Yeah. So, the first thing that comes to mind, right, it's like this, right? So, when a Sangha viewed the dog, okay, a Sangha was actually overcome with great compassion that extended to all sentient beings. Okay? But the particular object was just this one, you know, in front. You understand? You understand? So in a similar way, you see, you have a daughter, right? And let's just say, okay, the mother's out there, right? you have to provide for your children's education. Okay? And, you know, it's not like Germany with like, you know, state-sponsored education for everyone, right? So the primary responsibility falls to you. So if you were like, oh, but I have to have equanimity to, you know, all sentient beings, so instead of paying my daughter's school fees, I'm going to give, you know, 1 rupee to, you know, 50,000 children, you know, buy them 1 pencil. It's not like that, right? So you still uphold the responsibility, right? But try to not do it in a kind of, how do you say? It doesn't have to be biased. Like for example, see.
Not biased, but
No.
suppose I find someone really deserving,
Right.
then what do I do?
Well, it's like this. You can't do it all, right? So you take care of your responsibilities, then, you know, you can only do so much, right? So you take care of your primary responsibilities to your family. After that, you help others as you can, right? Having that desire to help them is great. So you're not helping them isn't from a lack of desire to help, but it's a lack of resources, right? In which case, there's no fault of miserliness, because miserliness is only coming when you have the ability to help, and because, you know, you're stingy, you don't, right? So that's not this case, because you've already kind of, I mean, in worldly sense, you've promised those resources to your daughter, right, to take care of her in a certain way until she, whatever, is able to stand on her own feet and so forth, right? So that is like, it's already kind of promised, right? So I think there's no fault. Okay, so I hope you learned something. Let us again do a quick dedication. Page 246 in the Gold Book. So in general, with these dedications, right, we have developed or created this merit, positive energy from our time here together. We want to then ensure that it ripens in the best possible way for the benefit of all sentient beings. So, generally speaking, we want to dedicate for the enlightenment of all sentient beings, their freedom from suffering and their attainment of full enlightenment. For that to happen, they need access to the teachings that lead to enlightenment. So we then also dedicate for the flourishing of the Buddha Dharma. And beings also need access to teachers, gurus, who are able to, you know, show the unmistaken path. Okay? So we also dedicate for the long and healthy lives of the spiritual friends, particularly His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, and so forth. Okay? So those three, you got it? Enlightenment of all sentient beings, flourishing of the holy Dharma, and the long and healthy lives of the spiritual friends. Those are the kind of minimum. Then, because the main cause of the attainment of enlightenment is this mind of Bodhicitta, then we'll also have the wish that the mind of bodhicitta arises and grows in the hearts of all sentient beings. Okay? So, of course, when we say that we want all sentient beings to be free from suffering, it doesn't have to be, okay, after they attain nirvana, right? But even here, what we see in these verses from Shantideva, see, even before they are fully liberated from samsara, we can dedicate for them to be free of these types of suffering. Okay? So, may all beings everywhere, plagued by sufferings of body and mind, obtain an ocean of happiness enjoyed by virtue of their merits. May no living creature suffer, commit evil, or fall ill. May no one be afraid or belittled with the mind weighed down by depression. May the blind see forms and the deaf hear sounds. May those whose body are worn with toil be restored on finding repose. May the naked find clothing, the hungry find food. May the thirsty find water and delicious drinks. May the poor find wealth, those weak with sorrow find joy. May the forlorn find hope, constant happiness and prosperity. May there be timely rains and bountiful harvests. May all medicines be effective, and wholesome prayers bear fruit. May all who are sick and ill quickly be free from their ailments. Whatever diseases there are in the world may never occur again. May the frightened cease to be afraid, those bound be freed. May the powerless find power, and the people think of benefiting each other. For as long as space remains, for as long as sentient beings remain, until then man too remain to dispel the miseries of the world. Okay, so we start tomorrow at 10.